Over time, we've covered a lot more from Conservative Home than we have from a certain website called UnHerd. Although I have, from time to time, touched on it a bit. We've seen it talked about on Conservative Home, or someone said that they've done something on UnHerd. But what is UnHerd? Well, think of it this way: if Conservative Home is meant to be the, shall we say, the serious sister, unheard is more the reform, shall we say, version of Conservative Home. It has some really wacky, out there, quite crazy people writing for it who are very firmly on the hard right. They have a lot of hard right values, and that is what we are going to cover today. And I think this article is really weird. The author, as we'll get into in a moment, tries to say that, oh, because young people really suffered a lot from mental health issues through lockdown. Gee, I wonder what this guy's thoughts on lockdowns are, right? Um, and yes, again, that is true. There were, mental health issues that did happen for a lot of young people, not just for young people, a lot of people, a wide range of people, uh, that happened for. He is now going to talk about how Germany and how German media is now being really irresponsible by putting out all these articles and trying to get Germany ready for a potential war with Russia. Now, quite frankly, I have seen on this website before plenty of what I call Russian hand wringing. Like, they will gladly write a pro puff piece about how Russia isn't a threat, that we shouldn't worry about Russia. They did one about Moldova recently in their recent EU elections, where they were just like, "Huh, you know, don't don't worry about it. Moldova joining the EU, not likely to happen." Because again of the pro Russian views that all that fake money, all that election interference that went on in a referendum to join the EU. Gee, I wonder if that might have any parallels with anything else that happened in this country. But anyway, yeah, we're going to go over this because I think this is well worth going over. I think there's some valid, well, I say valid points, but they're not valid. I think they're more made a mountain out of a molehill and trying to sort of uh, pair something where you really don't want to sort of pair these things up. But a lot of these things, and I can agree, we talk a lot about foreign policy, not only here, but on Geoscope as well. We talk about, the likelihood. I see whenever we talk about, the threat of war with Russia, I see how people sort of react in chat. I don't want to go to war. No one wants war. But unfortunately, there is the reality of what's going on in Ukraine right now. You cannot escape that reality. And of course, the fact that Russia continuously says that places like the Baltic states, Poland, um, Moldova, Georgia, etc., a lot of these other, again, former Russian imperial territories that they used to have, well, they're ours. We deserve to sort of say and dictate what goes on in these territories, regardless of what these other countries might even sort of like to think. So, yeah, I'd say that is something that should be brought to people's attention, and probably something, Germany should prepare for. Because throughout all this war in Ukraine, there has been a constant talk of, well, now it's time to sort of remilitarize sort of Germany, rebuild sort of the German military, because there was a big scandal right at the start of the war about, if they had gone to war, like, they'd only would have had like 2 days worth of ammunition, something like that. So that was like a big scandal in Germany at the start of this, of like the Ukraine conflict. But still, and even now, there is a need to, recognize that yes, Russia is a threat, and that actually, saying, "Oh, Russia's fine, don't worry, we can be friends," has not really being the truth. Yes, they might have acted as a friend. Meanwhile, they've been taking advantage of everything that they can possibly take. And maybe it is time for attitudes of Germans to maybe change quite fundamentally about how they feel about Russia and how they should be, treating Russia in particular. But let's go on into this, and you'll see for yourself. So, of course, this comes from UnHerd with the title of "Why Are Young Germans So Worried About War?" Then, not surprisingly, I think any age group would, of course, be worried about war. So it's now, of course, been widely accepted that COVID-19 policies had a very devastating effect on mental health of young people. Those days are, of course, over. Yet I like this. Yet the establishment's assault on the psyche of young people hasn't let up. If anything, it's now been ramped up as we've moved from now figuratively uh, waging war on the virus to the need to prepare for an actual war with Russia. Bear in mind, that is not too out of the scope with what you are seeing currently in Ukraine, what you are seeing, the rhetoric being put out by Vladimir Putin, by Russia. There is a very real need to sort of recognize the threat of Russia. And most people in like these Eastern European countries have been saying this for years. This is the very reason why a lot of these Eastern European countries joined NATO in the first place. So, in a recent, of course, youth study now published by by the German branch of the oil giant Shell, revealed a very alarming fact that the greatest fear now of young Germans is the outbreak of full-scale war in Europe. According to study, at least 81% of young people share this fear. In 2019, the figure was just 46%. Well, like I say, things have shifted fundamentally. You know, you look where things were in 2019 to things are now. I think you can understand why that would be. So it would be easy to write this off as a natural consequence of the current geopolitical turbulence in Europe. Yeah, so everything that is going on really in the world, all the geopolitical turbulence, that has nothing to do with it. That has absolutely nothing to do with it. Young Germans would not be, interested. What? But anyway, he continues by saying the truth, of course, is more troubling. Even though this study doesn't go into details, it is clear that young Germans don't just fear a Russian NATO war, they specifically fear a Russian attack on Europe at some point in the near future, as some German commentators have pointed out. Wait, if it doesn't go into details, how do you know that it's a NATO-Russia war, or specifically a Russian attack on Europe? Like, how do you know that if the study doesn't go into details? That's definitely extracting data from nowhere. Anyway, this is, of course, now the relentless result and the highly responsible political media campaign waged in Germany against Russia over the past years. Gee, I wonder why the German media might be talking about Russia. Gee, I can't help but think why that might be. It's nothing like the boss or the CEO of Rheinmetall was an attempted assassination target. Uh, you know, uh, by Russian agents. It's not like you've had continuous threats of Russian sabotage happening across Europe. It wasn't like we had the CIA and MI6 boss get together recently, where the MI6 boss said that Russian intelligence has become feral and erratic. Gee, I wonder why the Russian media, well, so should I say the German media, would be talking about Russia. I can't help but really put a finger on it. It's an absolute mystery, right? Absolute mystery. Anyway, this is, of course, aimed now at demonizing the latter, specifically, of course, at inflating the Russian threat against Europe. I mean, it is a threat against Europe. And, of course, Germany in particular. Take this recent bold headline that says, Russia is ready to attack us now in 2030. The article quotes a head of the BND and Germany's Foreign Intelligence Service, Bruno Karl, warning about a direct military threat from Russia and very soon. That may be the case. It may be, as a lot of commentators have said, that Russia wouldn't go for a full scale invasion. What they would do is just to take a border town and basically put NATO to the test. Like, would you really go all in on Article 5 just because we've gone and taken this border town and basically said, yeah, that border town's ours now? You know, put NATO to the test, break it apart completely, um, so that countries then sort of lose faith in NATO, and then destroys potentially one of the biggest defense mechanisms many of these Eastern European countries who are on the border of Russia have against defending against an invasion of Russia. Um, anyway, it continued. He said, by the end of this decade, at least, Russian forces will be probably in a position to carry out an attack on NATO. Karl said the Kremlin sees the Federal Republic of Germany as an enemy, which is again very true. He added, pointing out that Germany is, of course, the largest second supplier and supporter of Ukraine. No serious person does believe that this is a realistic scenario. I like that. No serious person believes that this is a realistic scenario. Russia has neither the means nor the intention to attack Western Europe. Yeah, Western Europe, probably not. Eastern Europe, on the other hand, that's another story. I'm strange why he doesn't sort of mention that, but there you go. Yet, of course, young Germans are now being increasingly exposed to this kind of geopolitical fear mongering on a daily basis. So it's hardly surprising to have that it's now having an adverse effect on their mental state. Uh, what about, as you said, the rest of the geopolitical currents around the world? It's not just here; it's China and Taiwan. You've got, South Korea, North Korea as well. Tensions rising along there. Just yeah, the world is getting a lot hotter and closer to war. There are a lot more flashpoints than there used to be. So maybe young Germans being a lot more media savvy than certainly that they used to be probably is a lot more concern for them. Because, as you said originally, they were worried about uh, war, outbreak of full scale war in Europe. That's what they were worried about. Not a Russian attack on Europe, but an outbreak of full scale war in Europe. That's what they were worried about. And again, there are reasons to sort of worry about that. I think you wouldn't be surprised for any age group. Maybe they would see that as well in Germany. I don't know if that type of study would exist, but it wouldn't surprise me if that was true for most age groups in Germany. So back to this. So this is now compounded by the recent appeals by the country's political leadership about Germany's need to prepare for war, with talk, of course, building up homeland security and, of course, the Eastern Front, and even reintroducing conscription or compulsory military service. For example, the leader of the centre-right CDU, Friedrich Merz, recently said that over 700,000 young people per year will be needed to be registered for military service, including women, although he didn't specify what this would mean in the event of war. Wait, registered for military service, but not. What do you think they're going to be doing? Picking flowers? Anyway, meanwhile, of course, the president of the Federal Office of Prosecution of the Constitution, the BVF, did warn, of course, increasing Russian activities in Germany. We are observing now aggressive actions by the Russian intelligence service, as I said before. Said, noting that Russian espionage and sabotage in Germany now, in particular, are increasing, both qualitatively and quantitatively. He failed to provide any evidence, however. You can actually find that quite easily by searching for it. And I can name one instantly because we've already said it. The attempted assassination of the CEO of Rheinmetall. You know, but ultimately, as just during the COVID era, the German political media establishments now embarked once again on full-scale propaganda campaigns, now stoking a climate of fear based on irrational, unfounded, and ultimately illogical, baseless claims. Um, it's not irrational. It is not irrational to think that Vladimir Putin might be insane enough to attack a NATO country. As I said, maybe just again take a border town, close the Suwalki Gap. There are a number of scenarios where he does not have to go for a full scale war. He just has to poke the bear to basically try and see if he can break NATO. Unfounded? Absolutely not. We've just covered on Russian state media, basically saying, look, a settlement in Ukraine will not be enough because we need to return to the Balkans, we need to return to Poland, a ton of other areas that he was talking about that Russia clearly has its eye on in a long term, basically military solution to some of these things. So these are not unfounded or illogical claims. They're all based in fact on possibilities that some of these things could generally happen. So, for the pursuit again of political goals, in this case, trying to justify a new military buildup against Russia. Gee, I wonder if everyone else is now, doing that in Europe as well, realizing maybe we do need to, take more of our military buildup seriously. I can't think why many countries would want to maybe do that. Anyway, just as, of course, during the pandemic, young people, of course, going to be the ones paying the highest price. They're having now being robbed of their best years during the pandemic. They lost 2 years at best. 2 years. Many of them are still in their young teens. I think they've probably still got many of their their good years left. They are now, of course, being terrorized by the irresponsible and potentially self-fulfilling war propaganda. Um, it's not war propaganda. These are based on realistic assessments of like Russian capabilities, what Russia and the Kremlin constantly talk about. Even Vladimir Putin himself has said, these Baltic states, well, um, we question their legitimacy because he wrote a massive rambling essay at the start of the Ukraine war to try and justify it, and he did mention about Russian imperial possessions, fall of the USSR. He was a KGB officer, I think, in was it Riga or Estonia? I think at the time. So yeah, totally someone who would not want to return Russian rule to these countries. When again, many of these countries do have a large speaking sort of Russian population, which he could once again use to justify or even try what he did in Ukraine to purposely, foment a civil war, do the whole little green men scenario, and then just, well, oh, we're just interfering. This is just a special military operation. This isn't a war. Yeah, there's a reason why UnHerd should absolutely remain unheard. And yeah, that article, I'm sorry, completely ridiculous. Now, well, again, the only thing he does get right is that young Germans are worried about a full scale war breaking out in Europe. I think there are justifiable reasons why young German people would be worried about a breakout of full scale war. However, to then extrapolate it, to then start going after all this quote war propaganda against Russia, when again, there are legitimate reasons why every single country in Europe has really looked at its military spending for various, geopolitical reasons. But there you go. So, anyway, as always, thank you very much for watching. And of course, leave a comment down below. Let me know what you think as well. Hit the like, hit the share button, visit the links down below as well. And of course, as always, we'll see you all next time.